Hello. Today I will be discussing numerical uncertainty of convolutional neural networks at inference for structural brain MRI analysis. A bit of background. So in recent years, there's what is considered a reproducibility crisis in neuroimaging. There are many causes behind this, not limited to small sample sizes in studies, analytical variability, and numerical uncertainty, which is the focus of this paper. Numerical uncertainty, which is defined as small computational perturbations introduced to execution environments that can amplify and create substantial differences in the final outcome of the program, is typically caused by changes to the execution environment, such as differences in software packages, or in the case of these figures, changes in operating systems. And these figures here are really just a case in point of how dramatic the impact of numerical uncertainty can be. However, deep learning models, in particular convolutional neural networks, or CNNs, are becoming increasingly popular alternatives to classical approaches in neuroimaging. They have been able to achieve equivalent, if not superior, performance to the classical methods and are significantly faster, which opens up the option of processing larger amounts of data within a more reasonable time frame. But there hasn't been much research into their numerical uncertainty. This is why the goal of this study is to measure numerical uncertainty associated with CNN inference in neuroimaging, with a focus on nonlinear image registration and whole brain segmentation of structural MRIs. To do so, we will investigate SynthMorph, a CNN that performs nonlinear image registration, and FastSurfer, a CNN which performs whole brain segmentation, and compare them to FreeSurfer recon-all, a more classical but very popular neuroimaging pipeline that we use as a reference. In order to measure numerical uncertainty, we use Monte Carlo arithmetic, a stochastic arithmetic technique that simulates rounding errors by perturbing all floating point operations of an application. MCA is chosen to measure numerical uncertainty due to the limited amount of modification to the source code required, as well as its ability to scale to large code bases. More specifically, we use random rounding, where the mathematical equation is shown here below, a mode of MCA which perturbs the output of an operation before randomly rounding off the perturbed value. The perturbation is introduced by taking the last bit of the precision component, illustrated here in red, and flipping this last bit, thus injecting noise into the program. MCA is applied through two tools, Verificarlo and Vehu. Verificarlo is a compiler that replaces floating point operations with perturbed ones. For this study, just the mathematical library used by FreeSurfer was instrumented by Verificarlo, so it is important to note that the numerical uncertainty reported on the FreeSurfer results are in fact just a lower bound compared to if the entirety of the source code had been instrumented. Vehu is a software tool that implements MCA through dynamic binary instrumentation without needing to modify or recompile the source code, and it instruments the CNN in the source code entirely, including the mathematical libraries. As SynthMorph and FastSurfer are built using the TensorFlow library, which is difficult to recompile, Vehu was used to instrument them with MCA instead of Verificarlo. Both tasks use the same dataset, which is the Consortium for Reliability and Reproducibility dataset, or CORE. The core dataset is an open resource that contains a range of different subjects captured at different acquisition sites with different dimensions, resolutions, and data types, meant to capture a wide range of data variability in order to better evaluate reproducibility. From core, we extracted 32 different subjects, which we display here, and in this case, this is after preprocessing. So, regarding preprocessing, we use FreeSurfer to perform preprocessing, And FreeSurfer preprocesses the data in an unperturbed or IEEE environment where the data is corrected for motion, has intensity normalization, skull stripping, linear registration, and more performed on it. At this point, a copy of the data goes to be non-linearly registered in a perturbed environment, while another copy of the data is registered in the unperturbed environment before whole brain segmentation is performed, once again in the perturbed environment. For the first task, nonlinear image registration, which is the process of deforming the subject image to fit a template space so that all processed subjects can be directly compared with one another, we look at the model SynthMorph. SynthMorph is a 3D convolutional U-net that performs this task and was trained on a synthetic dataset. First, synthetic label maps were created from brain scans, and then images were generated with a wide range of contrast, deformations, and artifacts. The model also uses a contrast invariant loss that measures label overlap to optimize performance. And in fact, the SynthMorph model has been shown to perform at state-of-the-art levels of accuracy, which is the primary reason for it being used in this study. On the other hand, FreeSurfer recon-all performs nonlinear registration by minimizing through gradient descent an error functional that includes an intensity term, a topology constraining term, a metric preservation term, a smoothness term, and a label term. We measure uncertainty for nonlinear registration by calculating the number of significant bits, which is defined as the number of bits in common between multiple independent random rounding sample runs for a given value. For the second task, whole brain segmentation, which is the process of labeling brain regions, we look at FastSurfer, and the FastSurfer tool as a whole can perform whole brain segmentation, cortical surface reconstruction, fast spherical mapping, and cortical thickness analysis. However, we only focus on the whole brain segmentation since this is the task that only the CNN portion of FastSurfer performs. FastSurfer is inspired by the QuickNat model architecture, which is composed of 3 2D fully convolutional neural networks. Each network is associated with a different 2D slice orientation, which is to say the sagittal, coronal, and axial view of the brain. FastSurfer's segmentations are shown to surpass state-of-the-art methods, as well as being generalizable to unseen datasets. Meanwhile, FreeSurfer does brain segmentation to a maximum a posteriori estimation of the segmentation based on the nonlinear registration of the subject image to an atlas. Now, because segmentation does not produce floating point values and instead has categorical values, we measure numerical uncertainty here with Sørensen-Dice scores computed for the brain regions, and more locally, the entropy value at each voxel. So for the first task of nonlinear registration, when we compare SynthMorph to FreeSurfer, the main takeaway from this graph is that the numerical uncertainty measured in the SynthMorph CNN at inference is lower than FreeSurfer recon-all. Moreover, we see that there is larger variability in the numerical uncertainty for FreeSurfer across the registered images and the warp fields compared to SynthMorph, which is much more tightly grouped together. If we look at the uncertainty maps per subject, we see that the observation that SynthMorph is more numerically certain than FreeSurfer still holds, and we can truly observe the range of uncertainty in FreeSurfer compared to the consistency of SynthMorph across our entire data set. However, when we look at the average across subject, another interesting observation is that there is higher uncertainty in gray matter and at the border of the brain than there is in the white matter. And this structural uncertainty that we observe is consistent across both averages and therefore both tools. Moving on to the second task, whole brain segmentation. Looking at this box plot overall, we can observe that once again, a CNN model was more numerically certain than FreeSurfer during the task of whole brain segmentation, and we determined that this difference between methods is statistically significant for most brain regions tested, but we made a point of marking the ones that were statistically significant with a red asterisk. Although both FreeSurfer and FastSurfer obtain high Dice scores across different brain regions, we see that for multiple runs of FreeSurfer for the same subject, this multiple runs produces visible variability, while FastSurfer is incredibly stable with very minute and negligible variation. This is consistent across all subjects, thus demonstrating that the FreeSurfer tool has much higher numerical uncertainty than the CNN model. Looking at the entropy maps where we calculated uncertainty at the voxel level, the conclusion about FreeSurfer's uncertainty holds. We observe that for FreeSurfer, as seen in the previous slide, the uncertainty occurs mainly around the edges of regions, thus indicating that the tool struggles with borders, while for FastSurfer, we only get scattered voxels that have high uncertainty and generally are barely visible. However, as you may have spotted in the last slide, there is a subject that experiences high numerical uncertainty for FastSurfer, as displayed here. And if we go back to the box plot shown earlier, we mark this subject with pink for FreeSurfer and bright green for FastSurfer, and we see well performs fairly normally for FreeSurfer. For FastSurfer, it is an outlier and performs pretty below average across all brain regions. This implies that the numerical uncertainty of FastSurfer is not wholly dependent on the model itself, but also on the data being input to it. So the CNN is not completely impervious to numerical uncertainty. To conclude, in this study, we observed that this numerical uncertainty in the CNN models, SynthMorph and FastSurfer at inference, was substantially lower than in FreeSurfer recon-all. These observations on the numerical uncertainty of the CNNs and FreeSurfer is consistent with other work that demonstrates both significant uncertainty in FreeSurfer and low uncertainty for CNN inference. These findings suggest that SynthMorph and FastSurfer results should be more reproducible across execution environments than FreeSurfer. However, considering tasks like nonlinear registration are by nature prone to uncertainty due to the variety of different solutions possible, given the differences in anatomy from individual to individual, it's not unexpected that we see numerical uncertainty appear in FreeSurfer. And given the lack of it in the CNN inference stage, we can speculate that numerical uncertainty might be more likely to occur during CNN training, where numerical optimization is performed in high-dimensional space. To wrap this up, future work still lies ahead in investigating numerical uncertainty in training, but this framework of testing uncertainty at CNN inference could easily be applied to other models. So if anyone is interested in exploring other models' uncertainty, I would be happy to discuss this further, and please feel free to reach out. Thank you.